Hey, guess what day it is?
I'm going to guess it's Tuesday again.
You would be correct, dear Watson. It is. And that means I'm Alex.
And I'm Amber.
And this is another episode of True Crime and Chill. So recently I got hired back on at Starbucks because the hours were basically easier for what I needed with my kids than at the penitentiary. As much as I loved being at the penitentiary, I don't love being there my entire life. So during the interview, my now boss goes, quote, "So what do you like to do for fun?" Unquote.
Yeah, because that's not a loaded question.
Right? Okay. So it's good. It's good. But like whenever people in interviews usually ask me that, I'm always like, and then I blank, and it's like everything that I like to do just goes out the window, and I'm like, I don't know. Do I have fun? Do I know what fun is? But this time I just kind of laughed because I was in the process of doing some research and stuff for the podcast anyways, and I just went really awkwardly. I was like, well, I like doing morbid things. I actually spend my days poring over autopsy reports and crime scene photos and just morbid stuff about true crime because I host a true crime podcast. And I swear to God, her and the shift lead who was interviewing me, their faces lit up like Christmas morning. It was the funniest reaction I'd ever had. And it's even today, I had my first day back today, and they were like, yeah, no, she's so into true crime. It's great. And I'm like, oh, yay. Well, it turns out my boss is actually from Washington too. So she lived up there. And fun fact, she actually lived right down the road from the Green River Killer himself.
Wow. And that's a weird feeling.
Right.
When I realized I was a senior in high school, when Israel Keys lived out in Nia Bay.
Right? My dad lived out there at that time.
Yeah. And he would get some of his victims from the town that I live in.
Yeah.
That was a moment for me.
Right? But she tells me that, and I was like, cause she's like, so you know who so she's like, you're from Washington, so you obviously know who the Green River Killer is, right? And I was like, yeah, Gary Ridgway. She's like, yeah. So I used to live right down the street from him. So I guess when she was I think she said she was 8 when he moved in and stuff. And he was just a really creepy guy. He was always trying to set up a neighborhood watch and was always trying to go around all the houses and talk to everybody about it. But he always managed to go whenever the men weren't home. And he would always come by her house and try to get invited in by her mom. But her mom would always be like, oh, my husband's, in the garage working, or he's out back, or he's doing even if her husband wasn't home, she'd say that he was and then try to get him off the porch because he was just a really creepy person, obviously. So she said I think she said she was 13, and he had already moved out of the house by then. One of her friends had actually moved in, and he had gotten arrested, and everything had started coming out. So she gets a call from her mom, her mom calls the school, and she gets on the phone, and she's like, yeah. She's like, hey, I'm gonna come get you right now. And she goes, why? She's like, well, because if I don't come get you right now, we're not gonna be able to park the car at home. And then her mom goes on to explain that there's news stations all outside this house. They literally had her street blocked off for a week.
Yep.
Because there was just so much, and they had to quickly move her friend out of this house, and they tore up everything. So she was just it was insane. She was it was crazy. She's the detective came by and talked to my parents and stuff, and she was I didn't realize it until I got older, how bad it was.
Yeah.
And I'm just sitting there in awe going, oh my God.
Yeah.
That is mind blowing.
Yeah.
So I was just I was shocked. It was just no freaking way.
Yeah.
So, but it's cool because I have coworkers that I can talk about true crime with. So it's great. So she was actually asking me about some of our episodes and stuff, and I told her that because at this time we hadn't done the Kurt Cobain episode yet. Mm-hmm. We had not done it yet. So we were about to do it, and I was like, yeah, we're actually about to record a Kurt Cobain episode. And so talking with her about mysterious celebrity deaths or just celebrity deaths in general, it really got me thinking about other celebrities who have died tragically. And, you have like the stars out there like John Lennon, you have Christina Grimmie, you have Selena, like you have the Selena and everything and stuff. But like, there's another one out there that I saw that a lot of people, like, they remember the name kind of, but they don't like remember the story. And this one is actually one in particular that got laws changed with DMVs on what kind of information they can give out without, like, a warrant or the correct paperwork from the family. So this week's episode is about the tragic death of Rebecca Shaeffer.
Let's get to it.
Okay, so Rebecca Shaeffer was actually born November 6th, 1976 in Oregon. So, like, she lived in Oregon her entire life and everything till she was about 16. And she's actually buried at one of the Jewish cemeteries in Portland right now and stuff, which I thought was really cool. So she's really close. She was the only child of her mother, Dana, who was actually a writer and a college professor and stuff, and her father, Benson, who was a child psychologist. And he was like, and both of them were pretty well known in their respective fields and stuff. And I watched a 2020 episode about Rebecca Shaeffer's death and stuff. And so you had Dr. Benson talking about Rebecca and sharing photos of her and stuff. And like just the way he talked about her, it was just, you can tell that he had a lot of love for his daughter, and like they were all really close with each other and stuff like that. So she was actually raised Jewish and initially wanted to become a rabbi. But while she was in school, she got the acting bug. She was a very popular girl. She was very outgoing. She loved being in the spotlight. She loved being on stage. She loved performing for people. But the thing was, is she wasn't one of those like mean popular girls that you would normally see. Like friends were like, dude, she never had a stranger. Like everybody was her friend. Everybody got a smile. Everybody got a wave. Everybody got a hi. Like she never really had anybody that was like, oh, well, this person's really mean. Like she was always nice to everybody. She was just really warm and inviting. And eventually someone actually told her, hey, you would make a fantastic model. And looking at her like headshots, like the pictures that she has out there and her headshots and stuff, like I can see why they thought that. Like she was gorgeous. Like she had like this beautiful, just like curly hair. She had these big eyes. She had this bright smile and stuff. And it was like this natural beauty. It wasn't one that was like, that needed to be like enhanced a lot. Like you could literally take a photograph of her and she was just like there. And it was that kind of look that like a lot of people are like, God, I wish I had that. Like it's looks that people pay millions of dollars for, basically. So she ended up walking into Nanette Troutman's office in Oregon, and she actually ended up signing with her to become a model. So Rebecca starts doing like all of these like just like print ads, like the Sears catalog print ads and stuff, like these like commercials around the state and everything, just like little things for modeling. But she really wanted to do more. So at 16, she convinced her parents to let her move by herself to New York, which I'm sitting here wondering, like, why would you let your 16-year-old move to New York? But at the same time, it was a different time. Like, I see it as like a different time. So I'm like, okay, it's just whatever. But she also seemed very grown up and mature, but at the same time, it's 16. It's 16. However, she didn't really meet the height requirements for modeling. She was 5'7". Like she fit the physique requirements, but she definitely did not meet the height requirements. Mm-hmm. As you know, most like high fashion models, they're very tall. They're like 6 feet. Mm-hmm. And Rebecca was just
5'8". 5'8" is short. That's how tall I am, if that tells you anything.
And Rebecca was 5'7", and even though she hit everything, she didn't hit the height requirement. So she actually ended up moving to Japan for a little bit to try and pursue modeling out there, but she didn't do well, so she ended up moving back to New York to continue. While she was trying to pursue modeling, she worked as a waitress. She ended up going on acting auditions. Like she ended up landing a supporting role in a soap opera called One Life to Live. Mm-hmm. I don't know, like we had discussed this, you didn't really watch a lot of soap operas. I remember watching Days of Our Lives religiously with my stepmom.
I watched Santa Barbara at one of my, she was my daycare provider. It was at her home, my in-home daycare provider. And we watched that. I remember watching the series finale of that one. Yeah. And then, my grandparents were big soap opera people, but they were mostly Young and the Restless and
Yes.
General Hospital. But I remember I would come, so they lived really close to the elementary school I went to.
Mhm.
And then they started watching my brothers and I after school because that's a lot cheaper than a daycare.
Yeah.
Um, and when we had half days, when I'd show up, those soap operas would be on. So,
Yeah. Yeah, no, I used to watch Days of Our Lives religiously, and I just remember watching some of these plot lines play out and thinking, "God, this is so unrealistic, but it's so good." Or like they would have like a character, but they would have like 6 different people playing the same character.
yeah, there's
And
a
nobody would say
reason.
any, and sometimes they wouldn't even look like the person before them. Like you'd have a redheaded actress playing this character, and then all of a sudden you would have this like brown, like long-haired actress who
Yeah,
like ends up playing it and nobody says a word.
no.
And you're kind of like, what?
Right. Well, it's just like they don't they talk about that a little bit on Friends, right? Because Joey Lance's soap role, and it they make fun of that stuff because it really happened, and they talk about
Yeah.
it in Schitt's Creek too, because Moira
Yes.
Rose used to be on a soap opera basically, and so they sort of throw shade at it there too, but yeah,
Yeah. No, it's insane. But so Rebecca actually ends up getting it's like a supporting role. It's turned out it was only supposed to be a few episodes, but they liked her so much they kept her on for a lot longer.
happens a
She
lot.
ended up getting on One Life to Live as Annie Barnes. And this is in 1984.
Mhm.
And all of her coworkers on One Life to Live said the same thing, that she was just very happy, that she was just very like friendly. She was like eager to learn. She did really well at what she was supposed to be doing. Like she was able to convey the emotions without the over the top stuff, because for some actors, like for some soap actors, that works for them. That works for the character, that works for who's playing it, but not everybody can do it in a correct way.
Yeah.
And Rebecca was very much able to bring like the emotions of Annie to life without overdoing it. And a lot of people actually love seeing her on the show and stuff. And Rebecca loved being on the show. But at this time, while she was filming as Annie, there was casting happening in California for a show called My Sister Sam. Now, soap was on daytime drama television, basically, and My Sister Sam was a primetime television show that was trying to come through. And for those of you who haven't seen it, I saw like 2 episodes on YouTube so I can like see what it was like with this, and it's actually a pretty good show. It's actually really funny. Like Rebecca was like spot on with this show. So, but for those of you who haven't seen it, it's basically about a woman named Sam. She's a freelance photographer. She's living her own life in San Francisco. Like she's doing her own thing. And then all of a sudden her 16-year-old sister shows up on her doorstep and is like living with her now. So now Sam has to figure out how to juggle being a freelance photographer and also raising her sister at the same time. And so the woman who played Sam was actually Pam Dauber, who, if you've ever seen it, she played Mindy in Mork and Mindy with Robin Williams. That was actually one of my mom's favorite shows. She loved Mork and Mindy.
My mom did too.
I feel like Pam like ages backwards because she looked older in Mork and Mindy than she did in My Sister Sam. And I'm sitting here going, does this woman not age? Like, and then I saw her in an interview for 2020 and she looks
Mhm.
amazing. I was like, "Oh my god." Well,
Sometimes once people start getting the money, they're able to really start taking care of themselves, and it
yeah.
makes a difference. Mhm.
She looks amazing. Like I was like, "Oh my god." But like so she had said in interviews and stuff, she was like, they had casted everybody, they got everything ready, they were about to start shooting, but they still hadn't casted Patty, Sam's younger sister, because they just couldn't find somebody who fit the role. And they went through actress after actress after actress after unknown name after unknown name after unknown name after unknown name. And like Pam said in an interview, she was like, we were getting desperate. She's like, at this point, we were trying to hire anybody to fill that spot until we could find somebody to fill it or if they could do it. And she's like, all of a sudden, in walks Rebecca, 17 years old, just bouncing into the room for this role. And she's like, we knew we had the right person because she looked like she could be my sister.
Yeah.
And it's true. Like if you look at some of the promo pictures, they look like they could be related. And I
Yep.
was like, that's insane.
Yeah.
Like I
Well,
like it because
it's kind of like, have you seen the movie? Bewitched with
No.
Will Ferrell and Nicole
Nicole
Kidman?
Kidman? No, I have not.
So they're trying to cast the role as Samantha in this new version of Bewitched, right? That Will Ferrell, who's a failing movie actor, is
Yeah.
taking on Darren's part.
Yeah.
And so he finds her like in this, where are they, at the bookstore, I think, because she can wiggle her nose and he sees it through the bookshelf. So then he starts
Yeah.
chasing her down. But the thing is, she's a witch, right? Like she's really a witch.
Yeah.
And she doesn't know who this guy is. And so he's all trying to charm her with his, his acting and, well, you could be an actress, and, trying to get her to take the part. So later, basically, she ends up losing the role because she did better in the trials than Will Ferrell's character, who
Yeah.
plays a dick basically. And so then they're trying to recast it, and they can't, like, they're finding person after person after person, and of course you're just getting the dumbest girls, and it's
Yeah.
funny, but it's that whole process of having to try and recast it, and in the end they don't end up recasting it and she gets it and blah blah blah.
Yeah. No, like I've seen like bits and pieces of it, but I've never actually sat down to like watch the whole thing.
I am not a huge Will Ferrell fan.
See,
Okay.
that's why.
Like,
Is because
I
I'm
right. Like, I know him from SNL. Like, I used to watch him on SNL all the time. And there are two
yeah.
movies I love him in with his overacting, and that's Talladega Nights, and I love him in Elf. Like, you just can't beat Elf.
I have to disagree with you there.
That's
I
fine.
hate Elf with a passion.
Oh god, I love that movie.
I
I
can't do
love
it.
Jon Favreau. Like, and that's the first movie he ever directed.
I cannot do I think the reason why I can't do Elf is because it's played it's like the Christmas Story for me now. Like I can't do it.
That's totally fair. But in Bewitched, he actually plays. There's one part where he gets to do his overacting, and it fits
Mhm.
so well. Um. Anyway, we're totally off topic, but that's what it reminds me of. Sorry.
So, but yeah, so basically they looked like they could be sisters. And there's a lot of celebrities out there that you kind of look at things and you're like they could really play siblings. Like Nina Dobrev and Victoria Justice could be siblings. Like they literally look like the same person. So Rebecca and Pam look alike. They look like they could be siblings. They have that like they had a good bond right away and stuff like that. Like Pam said that she walked in, she was just like, we're done. Like this is it. This is the person that we're hiring and stuff because she was so perfect. So back in the 80s, going from like a soap opera, which is like daytime drama TV, to primetime TV, it was unheard of.
Mhm.
Like it had been done, but very rarely was it done correctly. Because the thing is you're going from a very dramatic show where literally anything can happen to primetime TV. And it's harder to keep primetime TV viewers' attention because, yeah, like Days of Our Lives, One Life to Live, As the World Turns, all that stuff like that and everything. Like, those already have those have been around since the 60s. Like those have long running like people to watch them. Primetime TV coming out, you're starting all from scratch. You're usually starting with a whole new cast that people haven't heard of, a whole new story that people like, okay, well, are we going to like this? Or are we not? Stuff like that.
Right.
So it was really interesting to see how Rebecca would do it because of the different genre and environment, but she pulled it off seamlessly. Like she was literally Sam. Not crap. She was literally Patty. Like she jumped into that role. She played it wonderfully. She ended up moving to Hollywood after she got the part of Patty. And she moved in with Pam for a little bit during the first season while she got her bearings and stuff, which kind of like helped strengthen the bond between them. So like when you saw like the sister duo on screen or whatever, you would see like, so when you saw the sister duo on screen, like that was actually them. Like that was how they interacted with each other.
Method
And
acting. Yeah.
it was just super interesting to see like the show episodes and everything and stuff. And like she was just like, when I mean like she just had this like personality, she did. Like it made me want to actually sit down and just watch both seasons and stuff. I was like, I don't even like these kind of shows, but I actually want to watch it.
Mhm.
And she was like CBS's like darling too. Like she would do all the interviews. She did like the Thanksgiving parade. She did like she basically like did anything she could to promote the show and everything. And from there, like literally her career took off like a rocket. Like she was getting asked to do like a solo cover of 17 magazine, which back then, like, I remember reading 17 magazine. I remember seeing the solo covers. I remember seeing Britney Spears on the solo cover of 17 magazine after her Baby One More Time album and stuff like that. Like, I remember how big those were. So, like, for her to get a solo cover, not just with somebody else, but like a solo cover of 17. And then on top of that, TV Guide was like, nah, we want you and Pam to be on the cover of our TV Guide. To have TV Guide say that you are important enough to be on the cover of our magazine, like that's insane.
Yeah, that's a big deal.
And the pictures from the TV Guide shoot are just the absolute like cutest. Like, I think it's just the absolute cutest. She had people like reaching out to her for different parts, trying to send her scripts. Like, everybody loved her. Like, everybody loved her. So around this time with the second season of My Sister Sam, I believe that Rebecca had actually started dating Brad Silberling. Brad, if for off the hand reason that you listen to this and I just butchered your last name, I'm so sorry. He is actually a television director, okay? And he has directed a bunch of feature films like Casper, City of Angels, Moonlight Mile,
Oh,
Lemony
90s
Snicket's,
movies. Okay, yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
Lemony Snicket's Series of Unfortunate Events, and Land of the Lost. So,
Ooh.
not so fun fact, Moonlight Mile, which is actually about a man's journey to grieving after his fiance has been killed or whatever, was actually made after Rebecca died. It was kind of like his way of grieving. It was kind of like his way of grieving. Like, him talking about her, like just him talking about her and like interviews and stuff. He's married right now to a woman named Amy Brennerman, and they look very happy. They have children. Like, I feel like she really helped him through everything, but I really feel like if Rebecca had lived, like, they would have been it for each other. Like, they were talking about, like, they'd only been dating for a few months and they were already talking about getting homes together, getting pets together, how they would do their garden, what kind of stuff they would do, like all this other stuff. And he was like always, like, he would say, and like he said in the interview that I had watched, like, she never thought about like how she was like famous. Like, they both were doing things at the time to like further their career. He was going to school, he was trying to become a director, she was an actress, but she never like focused on the fact that she was famous. She was just Rebecca. Like, she was just Rebecca. She was doing what she loved. She loved to act and she loved to entertain people and stuff. And she was living life in California with the guy that she was in love with and stuff. And she was doing something that she loved to do and everything. And like, she like, he always said, like, she never really just, she was just Rebecca. That's all she was. That's all she ever was. And it was really sweet, but really sad to see like how he talked about her and stuff. Cause you could really tell that he did love her a lot. So, however, unfortunately, Rebecca wasn't just Rebecca, okay? Like,
Of
due
course.
to the huge success that she had with My Sister Sam, Rebecca started to get a lot more fans. She had a lot of fans when she was doing modeling and she was doing the TV bits, but this was huge. This catapulted her in the spotlight. She always wanted to make sure, like, her fans had, like, a personal connection with her. So even though Rebecca was a very smart, very, like educated girl, she was still really naive. She believed that everybody had a good side. She believed the best in everybody and stuff. And I mean, why shouldn't she? There was no reason for her not to. And she always wanted to have that connection with her fans because she didn't want her fans to think like, oh, it was just like a one-sided thing. They were just sending her things and she just wasn't caring at all. So she would actually like write personal notes on like the back of like autographed pictures that she sent to him. Like, thank you so much for your card, so-and-so. I loved it. It made my day, blah, 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 or whatever. And like, she tell her friends, she's like, I'm getting fan mail. I'm responding to the fan mail. And her friends would be like, no, you don't do that. You send them a picture and with your signature and with your name, and that's it. No love, no from, no heart, nothing. You just a picture and a signature. And she was like, no, it's fine. It's fine. Like, it's fine. Like, I want them to know that like I appreciate them and stuff. And it's like her friends were obviously very concerned about it. Pam had actually tried to steer Rebecca kind of like in a different direction, basically being like, hey, don't put your real name on a mailbox. Don't be responding back to these letters, because Pam, I believe when she was doing Mork and Mindy, she had to deal with a stalker,
She did.
and it was a very dangerous situation. And so she was trying to kind of give Rebecca that information and stuff, but she never really took it to heart. Just because that was just the kind of person Rebecca was. But at the same time, you got to kind of look at like how stalkers have played into like celebrities. Like you have John Lennon, you have Selena. Like her stalker became, like her biggest fan became the head of her fan club
Yeah. The
and
president of
embezzled
her
from
fan
her
club
and
and
ended up
embezzled a
killing
bunch of
her.
money from her. Yeah.
Yeah, embezzled from her and ended up killing her. And John Lennon, like this guy just walks up to him and just shoots him. Like there's tons of just in the media, especially there's tons of stuff with with that. And like you had mentioned before, like there was a Criminal Minds episode that was kind of based off of Rebecca's case as well,
Hmm.
and which was really cute. Like I remember the episode, it was like Spencer goes to Hollywood and is basically like protecting the star, and he gets really flustered, and it's so cute, and it's and like it turns, well, like if you haven't seen it by now, then I'm sorry, but it turns out to be like her assistant is like trying to, like she wanted to just be best friends with her, but then she wanted to be her, and like it was really creepy and everything and stuff. But like it, that's how quick, like that's how easy it is to happen. Even normal people get stalkers like that.
Yeah.
Like I have TikTok, and there are girls on TikTok who have to deal with it, and I'm sitting here going, it's a scary world that we live in.
Yeah. I have a friend who does YouTube videos, and now she's a Twitch streamer. But before,
Yeah,
when she was just doing like YouTube and I think Periscope, because that was when Periscope was a thing.
I
She
forgot
had
Periscope was a thing.
a couple of guys that were stalking her. Yeah. Hmm.
Yeah, and it's like, and it's really easy to find out like information and stuff like that over online. Granted, a lot of the sites are like scam sites, so they'll just take your credit card and give you like a portion of the information. But back then, it was super easy to find information on just about anybody.
Yeah.
Like it was super easy. So before we get any further, okay, topic of stalkers is kind of like where I want to stop and kind of go over this. And I swear this will tie into the story, so I just need everybody to stay with me. But have you ever heard of Teresa Saldana?
No.
Okay, so you've never heard of Teresa Saldana, and I know that you haven't because she was an actress that worked actually in the 70s and 80s. She was like this famous actress in the 70s and 80s and stuff. And she was basically Rebecca. Like she got a part as Joe Pesci's wife in a movie, and she just kind of blew up from there. Like she actually lived in the same neighborhood as Rebecca had moved to when she was killed and everything. So they lived around the same area. Yeah, like the similarities are freaking creepy.
Yeah.
So because she had gotten so famous, she had acquired a stalker by the name of Arthur Jackson, who was from Scotland. Okay, she acquired a stalker in a different country.
Hmm.
So this man hired a PI, okay, got the unlisted phone number to Teresa's mother. He then called Teresa's mother and said, "Hey, I'm an assistant to Martin Scorsese. I have a script that I need to drop off to Teresa. She is replacing one of our actresses, and I need to make sure she gets it before she gets over to where we are filming." And her mom was like, "Oh, okay," and gave him Teresa's address. So now, mind you, the PI didn't get Teresa's address, but he still got a very private, unlisted phone number.
Hmm.
So this guy, Arthur, like shows up at Teresa's house and asks her, like, "Are you Teresa Saldana?" And she goes, "Yes." And he just starts stabbing her. Like he just pulls out a knife and just starts stabbing her. And he stabs her, but and like people are watching this as she's screaming for help. But like they're like in shock. She was stabbed about 10 times. She almost died. And finally, like some guy, like a FedEx like driver, intervened and ended up throwing Arthur to the ground as somebody like ran to call 911 from a landline because they didn't have cell phones back then and stuff. And like if he had kept going, he would have killed her, obviously, but he didn't. Like it was lucky for her to be alive.
Hmm. I mean,
So
looking at her, she looks really familiar. But I think I'm confusing her with a different actress who also was killed by a stalker because it's a thing.
yeah,
So
she looked very familiar when I looked her up, but then I started seeing the movie she's in. I was like, oh no, she looks very different. Well, after she was attacked, she had about a 6 month like recovery period in the hospital, obviously, because she was stabbed like 10 times. Like she was stabbed so hard the knife like bent.
mhm.
Like that's how bad it was. And so mm, Okay. And so she gets out of the hospital, and her job basically went from being an actress to being an advocate for awareness about like this is something that people need to like be aware of. She ended up um writing, directing, and starring in a TV movie about her like ordeal and stuff. So that way she could get the story out there.
That's one
She
way to
ended up
therapize it.
Yeah, so she ended up getting that out there and everything. She ended up having rallies and talking to people and stuff like that about how we could better protect, especially like not just celebrities' identities, but anybody's identities. Like you shouldn't be able to get this information as easy as you're able to get it.
No.
So the story has a reason.
Yeah.
For me saying it, and I swear it's not just because it's a stalker, but it's coming up. So if we go back to Rebecca's answering the fan mail. Okay. She doesn't think anything of it until she doesn't think anything of it. She gets a letter from a 19-year-old living in Tucson. Robert Bartow was a janitor. He was working at a very low wage job. He was a loner. He wasn't right in the head. There were reports of him attacking like kids at his school when he went to school and teachers and stuff like that. Like he just wasn't all the way there. So he saw Rebecca on TV doing an interview about something and he felt like they had a connection. So he wrote Rebecca a letter. And Rebecca sent a letter back basically saying like thank you so much, like your letter was one of the best ones I have read. It made me feel really great. Thank you so much. I hope you have a great day. And like in his mind that was her saying, oh, I want to be with you, I want to see you and all this other stuff. So when he was arrested, Robert actually said in an interview, quote, in the summer of 87 I took a plane there, I took a taxi and rented a weekly hotel and tried to see her at the Warner Brothers Studios, unquote.
Seriously?
Yeah. So he flew all the way out there. So he tried to see her like 3 times before he actually shot her. So this is a 3-year-long ordeal. He brought a teddy bear, like a giant teddy bear, and a bouquet of flowers, and ended up walking up to the front gate and saw the security guard. And the security guard's like, who are you here to see? And he was like, oh, I'm here to see Rebecca Shaeffer. She's expecting me. And Rebecca was like on set, like recording My Sister Sam and everything, like filming My Sister Sam. And she's actually like in her trailer with one of her friends. And the guard calls and like he's like, hey, there's some guy out here. He's got like gifts for you. He says that you're expecting him. And Rebecca and her friend both go, no, like we're not expecting anybody. Like, no, we're not. And so like the guard basically sent him away. And so a few days later, Robert ends up coming back a second time. And the friend is actually there when he comes back, and she sees him get really agitated and really irritated that he's not allowed to see Rebecca.
And nobody thought to like call police or maybe like give her some extra security.
I don't think the thought crossed anybody's mind. Like, how many people a day do you think try to go to the Warner Brother lot when they're not supposed to like sneak on and go see some actors and stuff like that? Meet someone famous. Like, if the cops were called on everybody, LAPD would already be so understaffed. Like, it's not even funny. Like, they're already understaffed, but they would be even more understaffed.
That's true.
So Robert flies home to Tucson, and Rebecca ends up moving from the house that she was living in at the time to this cute, like, little bungalow type apartment complex in the middle of Hollywood. So she went from basically Overlook Hill, which is this really private area that a lot of stars live in and everything. It's very quiet, and then she ends up moving into like the middle of like West Hollywood. Like it's a huge shock.
That is a big difference.
Oh, yeah. Like, with the noises and stuff at night. Oh, yeah. So, it was also about this time that My Sister Sam actually got canceled because the ratings were low in the second season due to the fact that it was up against another hit 80s TV show, The Facts of Life.
Oh, yeah.
And I've seen a few episodes of Facts of Life and everything. And honestly, like, as much as My Sister Sam was good, The Facts of Life kind of, it was kind of like the 80s like teen girl TV show because it dealt with a lot of like teen issues and stuff like that girls were going through, whereas My Sister Sam, where they had the relatable teenage character, it wasn't as relatable as it should be.
No, it has to, it's a whole writing thing. I can go into it, but I don't need to.
Oh yeah. But I mean, both shows were great. If it was in another time slot, it would have been a lot better. But because back then, I don't think they really had DVR, so you couldn't like record one show I don't know when DVR was made. When was DVR made?
Alex, there are some days you make me feel so old.
What?
I didn't even have DVR in like 2009. It was a little more common.
No, because I remember when I was back in like early 2000s,
Yeah, there was
you could like
TiVo.
record a show on a tape and then.
Okay, that's recording on a VCR. That is not the same thing as DVR.
Oh.
DVR is digital video recording.
Oh.
It wasn't until later when it had to do with cables and the way TV, like getting TV through cable, you could
Yeah.
actually record a show from the VCR while watching another show on the TV. But that was like probably late 90s
Yeah. So,
that was
but
even
that's
a
basically
capability.
that's what I was trying to say. You couldn't like
Unless you had two
record the
TVs with two VCRs.
Yeah, you couldn't like record the episode and then watch another episode at the same time. Like
Not
that's what I
on
meant
the
to say.
same television. No.
Not DVR. Not DVR.
No.
You're not that old though. It's okay.
I'm not. But when you say things like that, it makes me feel old, Alex. I crept closer to 40 this year.
It's okay. I mean, I had a child, a 16-year-old, tell me they didn't know what Mean Girls was, and I was like,
It's a poor, deprived child.
how do you not know? Or, so was 9/11 actually real? Yes! Yes, child, it was.
It's okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's people who think the Holocaust didn't happen. So, anyway.
Yeah, very true. So, Rebecca, so while it was sad that the show ended, like obviously whenever you work on a show for so long, you become family members with that cast and everything. So while it was sad that the show ended, Rebecca wasn't like it's not like she didn't care, but she definitely was like, you know what?
It didn't define her.
Yeah, I'm on to other things and stuff. And like everybody was like, yeah, we support you and stuff. And it was true. She was on to other things. She was trying to make the most of it. She ended up getting cast as a young Diane Cannon. Diane is actually an actress who is married to Cary Grant. She's also the only one of his wives to ever give him a child. Mm-hmm. So that was interesting. But Diane had made a movie about her life, really depicting like her eating disorders and her addictions and like the stuff that she had to go through growing up. And she said in the same interview that everybody else did was just, she was like, Rebecca, she's like, we were casting for this, and all of a sudden in pops this like bubbly girl with this smile on her face, and she goes and she just blows me out of the water by being me. And she's like, and especially because there was a lot of scenes in there where it depicted Diane's struggle with food and her eating disorder and stuff. And so she said that like Rebecca would do certain scenes where like it would make Diane weep because she would remember all the emotions that she went through and then laugh at the same time, because Rebecca had this way of doing it that she made it her own, but she was also telling Diane's story and stuff. And so Rebecca did this movie, and she did a few other movies as well that got her name out there. However, one role she took would just change her life drastically, and she didn't even know it. So when a star plays like wholesome characters for most of their life, or like wholesome, like not really risque things or whatever and stuff like that, they want to kind of like branch out and do something like, well, what would I do to separate me from this character? Like, unfortunately, there are some stars that can't do that. Like, I can't see Daniel Radcliffe in anything but Harry Potter. Sorry, Daniel, but it's true. Like, Emma Watson has done a great job at separating herself from the Harry Potter franchise, but I can't see Daniel Radcliffe as anything but Harry Potter. I can't see, oh gosh, what's his name? Hayden, the guy who played Anakin in Star Wars. I can't see him as anything but Anakin. Like,
probably because you didn't see him in anything he did before that.
No, I did though. I saw him in other things, but it's like that was like the movie that put him out there. And unfortunately, a lot of shows or movies that put that star out there, people can't really separate from the role. Like Miley Cyrus, when she did Hannah Montana, she did a complete like 180 from Hannah Montana. Selena Gomez went from playing this wholesome, sarcastic girl on Disney Channel to like this sex bomb in like the music industry. Ross Lynch went from playing this dopey kid on a Disney Channel show and in Disney Channel movies to playing Jeffrey Dahmer, like
Yep.
in a very like dark movie. Like
Zac Efron played Ted
yeah,
Bundy.
Zac Efron went from playing like Troy Bolton to raunchy comedies and Ted Bundy.
Yeah.
Like it's just it's any other Nick or Disney star like that. It's just it's what happens. So Rebecca was like, I want to separate myself from the character of Patty. She wanted to separate herself from being typecasted, essentially. Like she wanted, like Keira Knightley. I love Keira Knightley to death. I think she's a wonderful actress, but she's very typecasted as a certain role or a certain period
The
drama.
British
And
Beauty.
huh?
The British Beauty.
Yeah, exactly. Like she's like period dramas. That's what she's great in. And I know that she's always wanted to kind of get out of that and stuff. But so Rebecca didn't want to be typecasted. So she actually was casted in The Class Struggle in Beverly Hills. And I watched a few clips from this, and it's actually kind of funny. It's a little bit comedic and everything. And Rebecca was great. She was honestly a completely different character than what she would normally play as Patty.
Good.
And it was edgy. It was unlike what she would play. She did amazing in it as usual and stuff. However, it did have a love scene.
Of course.
Well, Robert saw that at home and he flipped out. Like he was mad that Rebecca had like done this love scene because he felt like it had betrayed him.
Mm-hmm.
Like this is something that happens with stalkers a lot because it's like when they're watching you, they see this character that you play talking to them, giving their like feelings to them. And then when they do something that's not with you or something that kind of that messes up that bubble of, oh, hey, no, they actually are this actress, they're playing this character. It kind of it messes with them. They have a really skewed sense of reality.
Well, but it's like, people think that David Schwimmer is Ross Geller. Like that's
I
the
can't
person
stand
he
Ross
is.
Geller. I'm so glad I can separate those two because I cannot stand Ross.
Right, but he ends up being typecast and everything, and that's what people think he's really like because that's the character
Yes.
he always plays.
Yes.
Or like people fall in love with, bands and rock stars and they see them in these interviews and think that that's the person that they are, but really
Yeah.
it's not who they are. So, and this is a thing they actually touch in Notting Hill a little bit. Which is a great movie if you haven't seen it. It's got Julia Roberts and Hugh Grant in it. And basically she talks about how people they sleep with her and they've gone to bed with whatever character they were in love with, but then they wake up with the real person and they can't handle it. And it's part of why so many Hollywood relationships fail.
Yeah.
Because people fall in love with the characters that are created. They fall in love with what the writers have created and then the life that the actors bring to it, not necessarily the people themselves.
Yeah, it's like
And
normal people, like you and I can separate that. I mean,
to
yeah,
a
we're like
point.
yeah,
Sometimes
to
it's
a point.
hard.
Yeah,
And
to a
it's
point.
worse if somebody has some kind of mental disability.
Yeah, like Robert did.
Right.
And unfortunately, Robert really did see Rebecca as like
the person that he saw on TV and in interviews.
Yeah, but the thing is it wasn't that she was acting. It was she was sending her love to him through the TV and stuff. Like he genuinely thought that she was acting for him and to him and about him and all that stuff and everything. And like it's interesting. It's really interesting to like think about it and kind of go in the psychology of it. But it's a deep dive. But like I said, Robert freaked out because Rebecca had done a sex scene essentially with somebody else. She in his mind she cheated on him, and it was then that he figured he needed to teach Rebecca a lesson. Like this is not going to happen. So I have to give props to the gun store owner in Tucson because Robert tries to go buy a gun in Tucson, and I believe at that time in Tucson you didn't have to wait like a certain period of time. Like,
you didn't have to do that anywhere at that time.
Yeah, so you could just buy a gun that day. So Robert goes and tries to buy a gun in Tucson. The gun store owner's like, he said that like he had noticed something off about him. So he asked him, he's like, hey man, are you doing okay? Do you have any mental illness? And Robert was like, yeah, no, I kind of do. And so the gun owner was like, no. No, I'm not selling this to you. So he actually went the extra mile and like took a picture of him and like put it up on the wall so that way Robert couldn't come back. And and I feel like he sent it to his buddies and stuff, other gun stores in town and everything, because otherwise Robert just would have gone to a different store. So Robert goes and he got his brother to buy one for him.
Of course. Because, you know, his
Yeah.
brother didn't care, clearly.
Well, so his brother didn't know what he was going to do with it, but like at my point, like I think he was like, he had 7 siblings. Okay. You're telling me none of them saw like something was up with this guy, but like, so like his brother gets it for him and he goes, look, Robert, you can only use it when I'm around. Obviously, Robert's not going to listen to that. So he actually goes and he gets hollow point bullets because he heard that that would basically make it to where the person stood no chance. So he did this so it's not like he went into this going, oh, I'm just going to scare her and then he shot her. No, he went into this knowing that he was going to shoot her. So this is where Teresa's story comes into play. Robert actually saw her story, got the idea from her story to hire a PI to get Rebecca's address. So this PI spends about $10, $15, gets all of Rebecca's information from the DMV. Calls the California DMV, sends the money, gets her records, gets where she lives, gets what she everything about her basically, so that way Robert can find her. Doesn't ask why Robert wants to find her, doesn't ask any questions, just does it and goes along with his day. And so Robert then gets on a Greyhound bus and takes it overnight to Hollywood and just heads to her place. So at this time, when he's getting off the bus in Hollywood, Rebecca has no idea of what's to come. So it's now July 18th, 1989. It was a gorgeous day. It was, the news was talking about it was the first flight of the stealth bomber that they had.
Mm-hmm.
George W. Bush Sr. was visiting overseas.
His, okay.
What?
It's usually they call George Bush Jr. George W. Bush, and George Bush Sr. just George Bush Sr.
No, they called him George W. Bush Sr. in articles that I read. Yeah, and in the article, not the article, the interview that I heard on TV. I don't know why I couldn't think of that word. You can see how my night's going.
Yeah.
And so it was just they were just basically talking about how glorious day it was in California and how great it was in Hollywood and all the news and gossip and stuff. And the gossip of Hollywood, one of the main pieces of hot gossip in Hollywood was who was going to get the coveted role of Mary Corleone in Godfather Part 3. Now, this was a huge role that people were going after. Everybody was like, who's gonna get it? Oh, I think this person should get it. Oh, I think this person should get it.
Like when they cast a new James Bond, same thing.
Yeah, and I mean, granted, spoilers for Godfather Part 3, Mary dies at the end, but I mean, it was still a coveted role because it was the Godfather.
Yeah.
It was the Godfather. That movie, it was the Godfather. So many actresses wanted the role. So Winona Ryder, after all of this had gone down, Julia Roberts was originally supposed to be Mary. However, she had scheduling conflicts with something else that she was already doing prior. So Julia Roberts had to back out. So that's when all the rumors started going on. Oh my God, Mary's opened up again. They're going to start auditioning for her again. Winona Ryder had actually gotten the role. Mm-hmm. However, she had backed out because of anxiety-induced issues.
Yeah.
Which I also think this was about the time that she was in a lot of other movies. She was in a lot of other stuff as well. So I think it just got to her.
She started working with a lot of Tim Burton stuff. So
yeah, Madonna had wanted to do it, but unfortunately they turned her away because she was too old.
Also, she didn't have a whole lot of acting experience as much.
No, it was because she was too old for the role. She was too old for what they were looking for. She didn't have the youthful face that they wanted Mary to have. They wanted Yeah, so Madonna did not have the face that they wanted Mary to have. So Sofia Coppola actually ended up getting, oh wait, no, I'm not supposed to say that because you're supposed to say that. So Madonna didn't get the role. Winona had it but lost it. Julia had it but lost it. So everybody was like, if Winona and Julia did not get this role, because Winona and Julia at this time, like they were like the it girls of Hollywood at this time, like
Yeah.
like huge. So like if they didn't get this role, who's gonna get it? And so one of the casting directors that actually reached out to Rebecca and was like, hey, we want you to come in and audition and talk with us about this role. We want you for this role. Like, not, oh, we want to consider you. No, like her friends were like, no, they wanted her for that role. Like they thought that she would have been perfect. And honestly, looking at the character of Mary, like just with Rebecca's like features, like I definitely could see Rebecca playing it. And it really would have been like a step in a different direction to kind of get her career off the ground. So she's super excited. Like she's like, she was just waiting for the script to arrive for the movie so that way she can go over it and have the interview that day as well.
After Rebecca died, Sofia Coppola ended up getting the role, and she actually won Worst Supporting Actress and Worst New Star at the 90s Golden Raspberry Award.
Yeah, and it's like I was looking at that and I was like, that poor girl. Because I think when the movie went in, when Sofia Coppola, like honestly, Sofia Coppola was a beautiful woman. Like she was beautiful. That she's so beautiful. She's an absolutely gorgeous woman.
Mm-hmm.
And I really feel like she fit the role, but I feel like people kind of went into it like still thinking about Rebecca, who could have been in the role.
Yeah.
And stuff. So even though Sofia, I feel, because I've seen bits and pieces of it and everything. Sofia, I feel, brought the role to life. People were looking at it, well, oh, she's not doing as good as
But it's not
Rebecca could
Rebecca,
have.
and Rebecca's dead, so we hate you.
Yeah. Yeah, basically.
Yeah. It's
So
sort
she
of
ended
like,
up leaving.
it doesn't matter, but there's a.
So she ended up leaving acting after that. She did a few like minor bit roles and stuff here and there and everything. She said that there wasn't a reason why she left acting. She just never wanted to leave. She just never wanted to act in the first place. But it's like, I mean, after doing that, I feel like that my ego would take a hit.
A little bit.
So a lot of people thought that Rebecca was going to get the part, including Rebecca, because they've been basically telling her, yeah, we want you for this part. We just need you to come in and talk with you.
Yeah.
So that morning, Rebecca had talked to her friend, Barbara Lesh. She said, like, Barbara said, like, oh, hey, we're going to meet up afterwards. Like, we're going to go and eat. We're going to talk about this. I'm so excited for you and stuff. And that was the last time Barbara had talked to Rebecca and stuff when Rebecca got off the phone with Barbara. Rebecca also talked to her boyfriend. He had actually been there the night before, and in one of the interviews, he said that I'd been there the night before. I had left that night because I had some stuff to do the next day, and so I just wanted to be closer to that, so that way I could get it done and everything. But I was going to go back over to her house that night, and he's like, I keep wondering what would have happened if I had just stayed that day for just a little bit longer. Like, what would have happened if I just stayed until she had gone to the audition and stuff like that? Like, what would have happened? Like, would I have been able to save her? Stuff like that. So it was just really sad to think about that, like that all these years later, like that's what he still thinks about and stuff. So both these people didn't know that when like Rebecca talked to them, that would be the last time they would ever talk to her. And everything that happens after the phone call with her boyfriend is kind of based off of like what Robert had said when he was arrested and stuff. And he was actually arrested the day after everything had gone down. Police pulled him over, stuff like that. The morning of July 18th, Robert goes into town with the handgun in his bag, and he starts kind of walking around Rebecca's neighborhood with like a picture of her. And he's showing people like, hey, have you seen this girl? Do you know this girl? Like, do you know where she is? Stuff like that. He has her address, but he's just kind of like, I don't know what he was doing with this. I don't know. I can't tell you what he was doing with this. And eventually he makes his way over to her house and he rings her doorbell. Now, like I said, Rebecca lived kind of like it was an apartment complex. And so normally when you ring the doorbell for that house, a buzzer would sound inside the house. You could click on the intercom and be like, who is it? And stuff, and then like go from there. However, the intercom was broken. So it was never fixed. So Rebecca had to actually leave her apartment, go down the stairs, and open up the main door to see who it was.
Oh. Well,
so
she thought it was going to be a script that was being delivered, not a stalker.
Yeah, she went downstairs and answered herself and everything, but it was whatever. So, but basically, she was like expecting the script to be delivered. And so Rebecca opens up the door and Robert is quoted as saying to the police, quote, I didn't even have to shoot any security guards or anything. She was right there in front of me, unquote.
Well, he probably thought she was going to be more protected, but had they fixed the intercom, she would have been.
Yeah, I mean, anywhere else she probably would have been more protective. If they had fixed the intercom, he easily could have been like, oh, delivery or something like that. And she probably still would have gone down and like answered the door. But like, this is also back in the 80s. Like, though she was a star, she really only had security at the studio because she wasn't like Julia Roberts big or Winona Ryder big or uh like Hugh Grant big. I don't know if you like she wasn't big. Like she wasn't like people didn't look at her and be like, "Oh my god, I know you." She was able to still walk down the street and not be recognized by everybody that passed her and stuff. So like Robert mumbles about like, being her biggest fan and how he got her letters and hopefully like she got his, and like he said that she seemed really uncomfortable and like she shook his hand and just kind of tried to like get out of there, obviously, because like she like didn't want to. So she excused herself politely and just shut the door and left. And Robert left. And he ends up going to a diner down the street and he orders food. And he is just pissed because he thought that she would instantly be in love with him and they would be together forever and that she would just fall head over heels for him. So even though he went there with the gun and the hollow point bullets, I feel like he was trying to be like, oh, well, I'm going to talk to her. And if I talk to her and she falls in love with me, then we're going to be together forever and I'm not going to have to do this. Hold on. There we go.
Or it's more of a, well, now you're mine and nobody else is going to have you. But
yeah, I mean, because like the thing is with stalkers, it ends one of two ways. You can give into their delusions, and eventually, if you're not saved, it will end with them killing you, or they're just going to kill you because they don't want anybody else to have you, or they want to be you. And I'm pretty sure Robert didn't want to be Rebecca. Pretty sure, but it's just interesting because it's like, you had the like she had this time. She didn't know that when she went back upstairs to her apartment and she finished getting ready for this audition and stuff like that, she didn't know that the next time she go downstairs, she'd be dead.
mm-hmm.
Like she didn't know. And I feel like it's really interesting because he easily could have just left the diner that day. She could have left early, so when he went back to her house, she wasn't there. She wasn't there at all.
Right.
Like there were so many things that could have happened that didn't, that ended up with him standing on her doorstep. So Robert actually calls his sister and is like super vague, like, hey, you're probably going to hear things tomorrow. I'm sorry about this. And how like she tried to get him to come home and she was like, look, whatever you're going to do, please don't do it. Like, I don't think she knew what he was going to do to the extent. I think maybe she thought like he was going to like kill himself. But I don't think she thought, oh, he's going to go murder a TV star. Yeah. Like,
well,
so
she probably didn't even know that he wasn't even in Tucson.
Yeah,
they didn't have caller ID. They didn't have any of those things.
Yeah, she probably thought he was going to go kill himself. Like, that's right. Probably what she thought. And honestly,
hung up the phone and tried to go to his house, truthfully.
Yeah. So at 10:15 a.m., Robert leaves the diner and he heads back to Rebecca's apartment and rings the doorbell for a second time. Going back downstairs, Robert said that Rebecca looked agitated and said, quote, "You're wasting my time," unquote. And I mean, yeah, kind of. He was wasting her time and stuff, but he could have easily taken that out of context. He could be making that up. Because again,
he probably said something like, "I'm really busy right now."
Yeah, like I'm really trying to finish this or something. Like she probably said something that he felt like was a brush off, but he was like, no, she said I'm wasting her time. So there was about a 10-second pause between her allegedly saying that and Robert pulling out his gun while he says, quote, "I forgot to give you something," unquote, and just shoots her point blank in the chest. Like just doesn't even hesitate, just shoots her. And then he walks away. So one of her, and he only shoots her once. He doesn't go back. He doesn't do overkill. He doesn't stay to like watch her die. He just shoots her and walks away. And so one of her neighbors actually hears the gunshot and like opens up her door kind of, and she can hear like Rebecca saying, "Why me?" over and over and over again. And like this neighbor, even though she doesn't know if it's safe to go outside, she goes outside to Rebecca's aid after she calls 911. And she's just sitting there with the poor girl as like Rebecca's like gasping for breath and like trying to like stay awake and stuff. And she stayed there until paramedics arrived. So paramedics get there, they get Rebecca in the ambulance. About 30 minutes after Rebecca arrived at Cedars-Sinai's hospital, she was pronounced dead. And I sit here and it's like I look at so many things could have been avoided for this if it was just looked at a little bit closer. Like, the first 2 times he tried to visit the lot, somebody should have been there to been like, oh, hey, this is super uncomfortable. I feel like maybe we should try to get his name, like figure out who he is so we could figure out like what kind of person he is. Is he harmless? Is he a stalker? I feel like the
Maybe he wasn't
DMV,
the only person that showed up for her that day, though. Like,
but
that could have
the
not
issue
been unusual.
but the issue is he was the same person that the security guard described, was the same person that he described the second time when the friend was standing there. He said, yeah, no, he's been here before. So they knew that he had been there before. And then, like, his brother buying the gun for him, like, I'm sorry, I don't care if you're family. Like, I'm not going to buy a gun for you if I think you're unstable.
If he
And
only wanted him to use it when he was around, he should have just kept it.
exactly. Like, oh, hey, use it when I'm around, but I'm not going to, like, keep it with me or whatever, stuff like that. Like, the DMV being able to give out any of that information, like, yeah, you can go online, you can go onto, like, the people search stuff. And the only reason I'm saying this is because I did this after my mom died. I basically went and paid for because you can go and get a background search. However, there's different levels of background searching that you can do. So you can do like the federal government level, which you have to be a federal or government employee to like be able to do. You can do like the normal job level, which would tell you if like they have any warrants out for their arrest or like any convictions or felonies or stuff like that. Or you could do like the normal like civilian level that we can do. And it really doesn't tell you anything. It tells you old addresses. It tells you possible addresses. It tells you possible phone numbers. It doesn't really tell you like, oh, this is Amber Wheeler's address at this street in this town. This is her phone number. Like, this is what car she drives. Like, it doesn't actually, like, it doesn't give out as much information as, like, what's on, like, your driver's license. Because if you go to the DMV and you get it, like, 9 times out of 10, the address that's on your driver's license is your actual address. 9 times out of 10. Unless you're like me and you have a Washington driver's license with a address that nobody lives at anymore. Living in Tennessee, which reminds me I have to go this month and go get my license renewed. But yeah, so unless you're like me, but like he was able to go $15. Like, you pay $15 and you get this person's entire history from the DMV.
Yep.
Like, all of this could have been avoided.
Yeah, yeah.
It's just so sad because it's like, you know, she was 21 years old. She was like on her way up. Like, she had a loving boyfriend. Like, she had a loving family. Like, even watching the interviews, like, her dad still is not over her death. Like, it's been, I think, like 26 years, 24 years. And her dad's still not over her death. And I don't blame him. Like, that was his only child. And it was just senseless. And so in 1994, there was a federal law actually put into place to basically prohibit getting any kind of personal information from the DMV. So unless you have a police warrant, you are not allowed for any of that information. So this helps prevent this exact thing from happening a third time or a fourth time or a fifth time. It also started a whole slew of like anti-stalking laws to help people that are in this position. And that's for both celebrities and normal people as well, because normal people deal with it as well. Rebecca was a bright light to everybody who knew her. She would have gone far in the industry because not only did she truly love her fans, but she truly loved like doing what she loved getting up and doing what she did every single day. Unfortunately, Rebecca's light burnt out too early, but her death served a purpose to help others in the end. Thank you for listening to True Crime and Chill. For more information, including case notes, photos, and sources, please visit our website at truecrimeandchill.com. You can also stay connected with us on social media. You can find us on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. Look for new episodes from us each week on Tuesday.